Hello, our most valued student. My name is Confident. Welcome today to an information session. And in today's session, I'm going to share with you how they calculate your final mark. In other ways, I just want to bring you the information on the ICASS mark. Sometimes they call it the term mark or the task mark. And how does this ICASS or the task or the term mark, how does it contribute to your final exam? So you have heard many students, actually I've heard many students complaining with their marks, being unsatisfied with the final outcome of their results. And most of the time, the question that they ask is, how did my ICASS or my term mark contribute to my final mark? That is a very, very common question, and it would, if you will also be writing your N1, your N2, or up to N6, you will also come across this part of the term mark. How does it contribute to the final mark, and what are the processes behind the scenes that they use to arrive at the final mark? So let us look at a few things. The first things I'm going to do is to share my thoughts of what I knew before, and then I'm going to share something that I came across which will help you also understand the actual process on how your final mark is calculated. So now, what is ICASS? In simple forms, ICASS means the internal continuous assessment. So this ICASS is the one at the when you are doing especially your studies, with whether it's N1 or N2, they usually tell you that you have to come and write your test. For engineering related courses, it is your test 1 and your test 2. So when you're writing your ICASS, you find that you will have to write your test 1 and you will have to write your test 2. Now the writing of this is it's actually relevant, but first, before I go that, who prepares your ICASS? The ICASS is prepared by your teachers, your lecturers, and your subject specialist in your school. Sometimes what happens is, if the colleges have got different branches, you will find that there is one main branch that will prepare the ICASS for that particular term, and these are changed each and every term. So after some time, they recycle them or they rotate them, but the main part is, it is better to standardize. If ever you are having a college, or if ever it's a college that has got different branches, you might discover that the ICASS used across is the same. If it is only one college, the subject specialist or the lecturers or the teachers are the ones who prepare the ICASS for the students. Now, the next part I wanted to say is there are two ways. This is the part, 2 ways in which your ICASS is written. Now, the first part that usually happens is if you are doing what we call it correspondence learning. Correspondence is mainly distance learning. So if you are doing your correspondence, the way to write correspondence, the way to write this is, you can write this from home, or some other colleges, what they do, they locate a center where they send your test 1 and your test 2, and you have to present yourself to go and write that under test conditions. But most of the time you are writing it in the comfort of your home, and the way you write it, some of the students, they usually refer this to their books and everything, but it is always important for you to write it as if you are writing a test, because it actually gives you the actual outcome of what would have happened if you are writing a test. So you must treat it as a test, though they don't follow up much. The second part in which your ICASS is written, it is actually the same way I say it in a center, whereby you go to a school when you are attending either part-time or if you are attending full-time. So if you are attending part-time or full-time, you are going to write this as test. So it's going to be test 1 and it's going to be test 2. So you're going to write this under exam conditions, and I prefer this one because the outcome of that test is actually a true indication or reflection of what you know at that stage. Should you get the actual paper, you will find that you will perform plus or minus a small difference compared to what you performed in the test. So it's a better reflection of how you have mastered the content in this case. So the way to write it is actually the actual way in which the ICASS was meant to be written by the department, is whereby you write it as a test. Now let us look at the mark allocation. How do they allocate the marks for the ICASS? As I said, you have got two tests. Test 1. Now in test 1, it in a way, let me just start by saying this, it contributes 30% of your test. So even if it is out of 100, but it will contribute 30%. I will shortly show you the calculations. What about if now you're writing your test 2? Your test 2 contributes 70%. Now by meaning these percentages, remember these are percentages. Some colleges, this is what they do. They will give you test 1 out of 30 marks. So which means if it is out of 30 marks, not a percent, if it is out of 30 marks, it automatically becomes 30%. And if it is out of 70 marks, it automatically becomes 70%. But let's say your test 1 they gave you at school and your test 1 was out of 50 marks. The question is, how do you calculate now my mark as a contribution of 30%? So this is what they do. Let's say, out of argument's sake, the calculation here, let's say out of argument's sake, out of 50 marks in test 1, remember this is test 1, so let's say out of 50%, 50 marks, let's say you get for example, let's say 28 out of 50. Let's say this is what you get. Now if this is your mark allocation, you are going to multiply this 28 out of 50, convert it into a percentage, which you multiply by 100, and you're going to get, if I can look at that, it's going to be let me just grab my calculator here and see if I can grab that. Okay, I got it. So it's going to be 28 over 100, then you multiply, over 50, remember it's out of 50, and then you multiply that by 100%, so you're converting that to percent, so you've got 56%. So in this case, when they are writing, they will say you scored 56%, but remember you must convert this 56% back into 30%. So what they do is they take 56, you multiply by 30%, which is 30 over 100. The simple thing is to multiply by 0.3. So when you do that, let's see what it does. So as I say, it's 56 times 30 over 100. So it becomes what? It becomes 16.8%. So what I was saying is you multiply 56 times 0.3. That's what you'll be doing. And then, as I said, it's 16.8%. So if you round it off, it becomes 17%. So now, out of 30, do you see the mark allocation now? If you convert it to 30%, you are getting 17%. So that is your test 1. So that's how they calculate that. Now, sometimes there is a simple calculation that some prefer. Let's say if it was out of 150, what you simply do is you ask yourself, how can I convert 150 to 30%? So 50 to 30%. So what you can do, you can just say, if I say 50 multiply by 0.6, let's try that number. It's just a number that I've used before. 50 times 0.6, you see that it gives me 30. So this gives me 30. So which means even here, when you get 28, you are going to multiply the mark that you get. Like here, this is the mark times 0.6. So even here, this is the mark, which is 28. You multiply by 0.6, and then if you do that, it will then give you the same mark that we got in the, to say it is, I think it's 17.28 times 0.6, it was 16.8, which is 17%. So it's different ways, whatever case, but you have to convert. Now that is how they do your test 1. Now, how do they calculate then your test 2? Your test 2, it depends, but it is usually better to give your test 2 just out of 70 marks so that there is no conversion. You just get that 70. For example, if let's say out of 70 marks you perform and say you got 56 out of 70 in that test. So now as a percentage, we multiply by 100 so that we can see what is your score as a percentage. So it is going to be 56 divided by 70 times 100, and then it gives us 80%. So which means you scored 80% in test 2. Okay, but now if we want to know the contribution of this 56 into your test 2 out of 70, remember it's already out of 70, so it contributes 56%. That's what it does. So what they then do, they take the test 1, remember test 1 is out of 30 and test 2 is out of 70. If you add these, you can see that 30 plus 70 is out of 100. So what they will do, they will take your test 1, which was out of, if you look at this, test 1 was out of 17, test 1 was 17%, and test 2 is 56%. When we add that, it must give us the total, which is 7 plus 6 is 13, 5 plus 1 is 6 plus 1 is 7. So which means you got 73% out of 100 in your ICASS. Remember, the total is out of 100, so you got 73 out of 100. Now we are going to come back to this number to say what do they do to this particular ICASS, because that's where the argument is. The student will tell you, but I got 73% in my tasks, in my assignments. How come I failed the exam so dismally? Sometimes you find ridiculous marks such as 10%. You're asking yourself, but 73 out of 100, how did it end up being a 10%? So this is what I'm trying to bring along as we're going to be answering this. So we're going to come back to this slide. Let us continue with a few things. Then we're saying after you have gotten your ICASS, which is this 73, what we do is the marks are captured and submitted to the DHET, which is the Department of Higher Education and Training. Remember, the colleges, what they do is they administer the tests, but they don't keep the marks to themselves. The marks are needed by the Department of Higher Education because remember we said they form part of your final mark. Now there are two things that these marks are important. The first part, which they will ask, is the importance of the marks for them to be submitted. They qualify you, your ICASS, it qualifies you to sit for the final exams. That's the first part. So don't forget, if your ICASS is not submitted, you cannot sit for the final exams. So that is the first thing that is importance of ICASS. So the second thing is that it boosts your final results. So it boosts or it contributes to your final mark, to your exam mark. I'll call it to your exam mark. Alright, so first things foremost, it qualifies you to sit for the final exam. And what is the minimum mark that you must obtain? You must obtain a minimum mark of 40% in your ICASS. If you get less than 40%, you will not be qualified to sit for the exam. So actually, colleges don't capture at all this, anything that is less than 40%. We don't capture that. Well, being private, sometimes we give a student another chance to write the test, maybe a different test, so that we can see how they've improved. We give them a bit of time to say, go and study again. We might get a chance to write a different test so that we can see whether you have managed to make it. Or sometimes we thought, okay, let me talk about public colleges. Public colleges, they will just tell you, in this term or in this trimester, you did not qualify to sit for the final exam, so you won't be allowed at all. In as much as your permit is going to come, but you won't be allowed to sit for that exam because your marks will be null and void. You won't get any results. Moving on. the general comments on ICASS and calculation of the promotional marks. That is where the issue is, the general comments on ICASS. So this is my general comments, guys. Please don't crucify me for this. My general comments and my observation with time on the students' marks and everything is that this ICASS, I always tell them to say, you need to forget about the contribution of your ICASS in the final exam. What you need to use the ICASS for is you need to use your ICASS just to qualify yourself to sit for the final exam and forget about it. Why? Because there's a lot of discrepancies when it comes to this final calculation. You're going to see what I mean later. So that is my general comment. If you happen to get a good mark on your ICASS for whatever reason, I will say you have got a lot of things to prove. Let's say, for example, from the previous slide, our student here, he managed to score 73% in the final ICASS. So what it means from my general information is this 73%, you need to prove it in the final exam, and your final mark that you're going to obtain, it needs to be somewhere in the range of 65%. That is your final mark, 65% to maybe 85%. You see, so you are now in a pressure of getting a minimum mark of 65%. It is not a problem if this is your actual performance. It is a problem if you are doing correspondence, someone helped you or assisted you to do this ICASS and you got this 73 and you know deep down that you did not put your maximum effort there. So for you to go and stretch yourself for this 65, it becomes a problem. Now the question is, what happens then if I get something smaller than 65 or less than 65? These are my general comments. Remember, guys, I'm just under correction here. What I've observed is they will throw away that mark. They won't even use it, because if you get anything less than 10% or so, they will say that this is not a true reflection of yourself. Apparently, this is the system. So it's not a true reflection of yourself. For example, let's say you score 42 in your final mark in your exam. So the exam here is 42. If you look at 42 and 73, you can see there is a big difference. So what they will do is they will say this is not your true reflection in the 73. So they will throw away this ICASS. When they throw away the ICASS, which means they are now focusing purely on your exam mark. And from what I used to believe and seen is that this final exam mark will become your final mark. To say your final promotional mark then will be 42%. Are you with me? But let's say for argument's sake, they were going to use, if it was the way they were supposed to use, let's say they were going to add this 73% in my ICASS. How was it supposed to calculate? So this was what they do. Again, previously, with as I said, it was me without much verification of the information. I was of the impression that it contributes 25% to your final mark. Apparently, it contributes 40%, not 25. But let me work on my 25% that I used to think of. So what they will do is they take the 73% that you got and then they multiply by 25 over 100. So let's see how much is a contribution of your ICASS in that case. So it is 25. It says 73 times 25 over 100. Just to see how much did that contribute. It contributed 18.2. Let's say for argument's sake, as long as it is above 18, it becomes 19. But let's round down to say 18%. So what they do is it was supposed to have this 18% added, and when you add the total there, 8 plus 2 it's 10, 4 plus 1 is 5 plus 1 6. So you were supposed to get 60%, but as I said, you won't get this mark. Why? Because that ICASS did not match the one, that 42% you in the final exam did not match your ICASS, so they know that it's not a true reflection. But now if it was 40%, it's even more interesting, because we are going to get 73 times 40 over 100, because they claim, or they say, it's actually 40% from my findings. So if you say 73 times 40 divided by 100, it's a 60/40. So okay, what is that? It's 29 here. It's 29%. Actually, I need correction here. Let me correct this again. Let me correct these guys. I made an error here. Let me bring this into sanity again. Something is wrong that I did here. Okay, let me see, what was that mark? First, the mark here was 18, so I need that mark. So, but let me correct things here. So here it was, remember, the 40, we said the 73 became, this 73 here, it reduced to 18 marks out of 25%. I was working on the 25%, so it reduced to 18%. So now we say the final mark is 42%, remember. So the 42%, remember, if this is 25, this side is going to be 75. So it's 25% ICASS, 75% the actual exam. So you're going to take the 42 times, just like we did here, the 75 over 100, just to see what this 42 becomes. So when you do that, if I just quickly grab my calculator, because they don't take that 42 purely, it has to be converted to 75%. So it's 75 over 100, and then from there you see that the 42 has become 31,5, which we can say is roughly 32. So what they do, that is when now they take this 32, they add it to 18. So see, to say 8 plus 2, it's what? It's 10, which is 0 carry 1. 3 plus 1 is 4 plus 1 is 5. So you are going to get, instead of 42, your mark now is 50%. So you see that the ICASS played a big role there. But now, what if it is a 40-60 rule? If we're here, because apparently this is actually what is happening. So if it's 73 times 40 over 100, we've got 29% contributing, and the final exam here, remember, if it's 40, the final exam becomes what? 60, because the total must be 100. 40, 60 rule. So here it would be 60 over 100, or 100 times, we multiplied here by 42, so now we multiply also by 42. It was 75 over 100 times 42. So if I do that, I will get here, if I grab again my calculator here, as I said, it's 42 times 60 over 100. So the contribution here is 25%. So you have got 25 on this side. So you see where things are not making sense, to say in your final exams, you've got a smaller contribution than in your ICASS, which is 29. So what they do is they add that 29 plus 25. Now if you add 9 plus 5 is 14, 4 carry 1, 2 plus 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5. So if it is using a 60-40 rule, you even get a higher percentage than when it was a 75-25 rule. So guys, this is what I thought, but on this side, I was actually on this side of the rule, but actually it is on this side. But I also told you, if the mark is too high, it is not going to benefit you. Now, with that in mind, let us look at the actual policy on ICASS. How do they go about calculating your actual final mark, which is the promotional mark on your ICASS? It's a bit tricky, but you need to just bear with me. I'm just going to go a little bit faster, but just pause in and try to read through, and then maybe you'll get to understand. But there are a lot of jargon, there's a lot of words that are used here that might even confuse you, but I'm just going to try to summarize a few things for you. The first part says there are processes prior to the calculation of the final promotional marks. So this is the information that I got. Now listen carefully. It says there are processes prior to the calculation. So these processes is done by the system. So there are processes prior to the calculation of the final promotional marks. Not only the system, by the way, there are also people behind the scenes that are involved. The first part says a standardization. As you can see, a standardization process is conducted where a representative of colleges, so there are those who represent the colleges, and then there are those who represent the Department of Higher Education, and then there is also the Quality Council that is also present, and the Quality Council here is Umalusi. So we have got Umalusi, the one who quality assures these exams. So we have got what? The colleges, the DHT, the Quality Council with a board of professional. Listen to now, there is also a board. So the first one is colleges, 2 there is DHEAD, 3 there is Umalusi, and 4 you've got this board of professional statisticians. Sorry about that, it's statisticians, which they will discuss every subject offered nationally. So they will look at the subjects and they will discuss each and every subject offered nationally. What are they going to do? They are saying they are going to compare what is called a historical norm based on the previous. So they are going to look at the historical norm, meaning they will look at the previous 6 examination cycles, and when they look at the 6 different exams that were written, they compare those exams to the current performance of the candidates. So they take the 6 different exams, they looked how the candidates were performing then, and then they look in comparison to this current exam that would have been written, and then from there they will also look at this 5th percent, the chief markers report. So the chief markers are also going to compile some reports, because remember, your papers are marked nationally. So after your paper has been marked, there is a chief marker for each and every subject. So these chief markers are going to compile a report, and then look what they're saying there. They are saying chief markers are used to determine, from those reports, they are used to determine whether the question paper was on standard, whether it was a standard paper, and the cognitive levels in comparison with the previous examination cycle. So they just want to compare the fairness of that paper. That's in layman's language. They want to see, was the paper of good standard, of quality, and is it in comparison to the previous exams? If it was too difficult, you'll see what they do. If it was too easy, you'll see what they do. If it was matching, then they maintain everything. Now this is where it happens. Everything is being cooked up here. They are saying adjustments. This is where, guys, you need to see why you always complain when it comes to your ICASS and your final mark. This is where adjustments, either negative adjustments or sometimes it is positive adjustments, are decided on and implemented. I just want to pause there to say, sometimes, I told you to say your ICASS can actually not benefit you. Previously, I thought they just throw away that ICASS, but apparently they don't. There is a negative adjustment whereby they literally take marks out of the student, and sometimes there is a positive adjustment where they literally add marks to the student. This is not the first time Umalusi does this. Umalusi does this even on the grade 12 results. You have heard about this COVID-19, and they were asked, are you going to adjust the marks? And this time they said they were not going to adjust, especially for mathematics and physical science. So these are difficult subjects, so they were asked, are you going to adjust them? And they said they were not. Sometimes if there are paper leaks, I find that the paper leaked and they don't want to rewrite it again, there is also this thing about negative adjustment and positive adjustment. Unfortunately, it affects everybody. So now let's look at this. It says they are decided and implemented. So they will implement those. Once captured, it is approved by the Quality Council. Remember, we said the Quality Council here is Umalusi. We're going to come back to this statement again. As soon as the adjustments, see here, says as soon as the adjustments are approved by the Quality Council, remember, the statistical moderation process commences. So now remember, they say there is a group of professional statisticians who are going to then do the moderation process. So they're saying, in layman's terms, it means the ICASS. This is the part now. They are saying, what is this statistical moderation? They are saying In layman's terms, it means that ICASS, which is the trimester mark, the test 1 and test 2 that you wrote, is aligned with the performance of the candidates during the examination part. So they look at the ICASS and they look at the final exam, and statistically they're going to look at the differences, how far this differs. If there is a too much difference, remember there is a negative correlation, or there is a negative where they take out marks, and there is a positive one where they add marks. That's why they say the average of the examination marks of the specific subject and the colleges is determined. So what they do is they will look at the whole country. If they look at the whole country, they will look at the average performance of all the students in that block. They are going to find that average. What do? They also look at the particular college's average in terms of performance, both in the ICASS as well as in the final exam. So when this whole statistical analysis is done, the average of the trimester mark for the specific subject percentile is then determined. That's how they find now the average. That is where this average is a dangerous average, because it is then compared with the performance during the examination. That is where this average mark is compared. It leads to subtraction of marks or to the addition of marks in some cases. So this average, remember where it comes from? It comes from the average of the subject as well as the performance average of the college in name. So when they do that, should it deviate vastly, that's where the key whole thing is. The trimester marks are adjusted either positively or negatively per candidate, and the final promotional mark is calculated. So guys, in this whole thing that I was showing you, whatever is being cooked here is what is resulting in your final mark. Sometimes you find that you did well in your ICASS, but your final mark is more terrible than your ICASS, and you're asking yourself, but where is my term mark? You even ask yourself to say, sir, how did my term mark contribute into this whole thing? Because the mark is actually ridiculous. I cannot believe this is also including my term mark. So you must remember, there is a part whereby there is a positive adjustment and a negative adjustment. I have a case whereby a negative adjustment, I witnessed one where a negative adjustment occurred to a point whereby you can be having in your final exam, maybe you have got 30%. But after negative adjustment, you find that now your final mark is 25% in your final mark. You can actually be penalized out of that. Remember, it's done across all students. It's done per candidate, but across all students. These moderation records and candidates' results are submitted to Umalusi. Back again, the Quality Council for approval. The results are released upon the green tick from Malusi. So when Malusi says the results are quality assured to be correct, a reflection of the exam, then these results are released. These are the results that will be sent to colleges, and then from the colleges you will receive your statement to say how did you fare in that exam. Remember, it is not at the discretion of the college how these things were done. The colleges are not notified at all whether there were positive adjustments or negative adjustments. We are not told. We are just given the mark. So the colleges, in a way, though, they take the blame, because when students are complaining, remember, they go to the colleges. Now students, when they want answers, that's where you find a lot of guesswork and assumptions and answers which lecturers are trying to justify so that they can explain why you performed at that. But this is the whole jargon that actually took place. Now let's come to the ratio. I said I thought the ratio was a 75:25 ratio. Actually, the true one they're saying is the 60-40, meaning the 60% comes from your exam, see now, and the 40%, which is a lot, it comes from your assignment mark or your ICASS. So you expect then already, remember the pass mark is 40. If you can get 100% in your ICASS, it means already you are entering the exam with a 40%. You see, already you have passed, but that's not the case. There is a lot of failures in these end courses. So that is where the whole jargon that I was reading there to say this 40%, in as much as it is big like this, it can result in negative adjustment, or it can result in positive adjustment. It can make you happy, it can make you sad. It can give marks, it can take marks. So in as much as you celebrate, you don't need to celebrate over that the ICASS actually has more marks than you thought as compared to the actual exam, whereby it contributes 60%. So they're saying the ratio here is 60-40 is the examination versus the trimester mark. Now in summary, what am I saying? Must you rely on your ICASS at all? Is it something to depend on? Is it something to put your trust on? Is it something to put your bet on? Is it something to put your money on? I say personally, no. I actually encourage my students to put a lot of focus on this ICASS, because what it does is it gives a false hope. You find that you prepare your students, for example, remember the 30%? It is usually given when the syllabus is just beginning. We usually say in joking terms, the syllabus is still very young. Whenever there is 30% of the content covered, when you give students some test here, you'll find that students are doing well because there is less content. Again, if you prepare students well for the 70%, being lecturers, we also in a way prepare our students for what will be in the test. So there is that kind of favoritism of some sort, because you want your learners to do well. Now you'll find that students performed well here, but now does it mean they will perform good in the final exam? Yes, it might be so, but if your test was a little bit dilute, remember these tests, they go under internal moderation, whereby they are moderated, and then after moderation they are also given to students. But if the paper was a bit dilute, not difficult, you will then give a false hope to students, whom they will think that with the good mark in their ICASS, they will get good marks in their final exam. So I'll say to students, if ever you are sitting in any college and you are going to be writing your final exam, scratch out this ICASS, but use it only for one condition. Remember, without ICASS, so here, no ICASS, what does it mean? It means the exam also, you can't write it. So no ICASS, no exam. So you need to get the ICASS. So what you need is just pass your ICASS. If you're tempted to pass it with a good mark, for example, you are doing it under correspondence and you know that someone can assist you, or you can see that in this ICASS you can actually look at some of these questions that are repeating and you can literally get a good mark. Avoid good marks in this ICASS. Put yourself in a range of 50 to 60%. That is, if you know this is not a true reflection. If you know you are very good and you trust yourself, put yourself under test conditions. Don't look at the ISEC if you're under correspondence. Write it, and if it's 80%, you'll know this is my 80% without any reasonable doubt. So with that 80%, I guarantee you, in the final exam, you might fall to 70, you might actually go to 90, which is good. But now, for general students, common among most students is don't use your ICASS as something to rely on, but use it just to enter into that exam, to qualify yourself. Why am I saying that? This is to avoid a lot of disappointments whenever you put your bet on this ICASS. So what I'll say is just pass your exam, focus on your exam, and pass this particular exam at least with a 50% pass. Well, you can do a 45% pass, is still good, but a 50% pass is going to guarantee you a good pass. Remember, there is the negative moderation whereby they take marks from you. So chances of them taking 10 marks and then you're left with 40 is small. But chances of them taking 3 to 4 marks can be common, so that if ever there is a negative adjustment, you know that you're still safe. So that is what I'll say. So my final thoughts on ICASS, I say use ICASS just to qualify for exams and do well in your final exams. At least aim for above 50% and you will be in a good way to pass your exams. As I say, this is one of the videos I really bring in. I know I'm always calculating math, science, and it's all about numbers, but today I thought of bringing some of this information. Time and again, I will be bringing this kind of information to you guys. If there's something you feel you need a bit of knowledge about, feel free to drop down on the comments below to say, please can you explain blah 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 blah, and then I'll research about it and then bring it to you. It can help you as you navigate your way in your end courses. There is a lot of information that you can find online. It needs someone who can check it for you properly so that you can know what is what. There are many questions students have. I expect after listening to this, you're going to drop those questions, and I'll be bringing time and again such videos to help you understand in detail what is happening behind the scenes. Guys, I hope this was of help to you. Remember, if this is your first chance coming to a contact with this channel, subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to like the channel. Don't forget to press that notification bell. It will notify you when these videos are posted. We've come to the end of our session, and this is the 24-minute lesson. Mainly it's a channel for the underdogs, meaning those who are struggling with their mathematics and science, and we are taking them from the lower bar to a bar that is high to realize their own dreams. We've come to the end of our lesson. Thank you.